the biggest battle that needs to be won in the modern day is the battle over your awareness and your mind. And I think that of all the places we're getting pulled and mentally and just all of the tension and stagnation, being able to apply these arts in a way that like you can reclaim your individuality and your ability to sort of hold your focus, I think is the most valuable thing for our society to survive. We're super blessed, from you and Bruce and Liu Hongjae and everyone that came before, for having this very comprehensive view and sort of methodologies where you could bring in all these different pieces and tailor it to what everyone needs at that moment.
Everything in our system is a continuum. And that's the whole point of an integrative system, and I tried other systems before, and it was like I was involved in a group that was doing Kabbalistic work, and then they would go into, well, we need to do something for the body, so we bring in some yoga for the body, which has nothing to do with the Kabbalistic work, right? But they fuse it in there, right? And then it's like, and then we have this meditation that we do from this other tradition here because we need something for that, and so they splice that in, and now you've got this kind of mishmash, right? The benefit of a real old integrative system.
Tex-Mex,
Yeah, Tex-Mex, yeah, is the fact that everything is integrated. And I've said this many times, you may start your journey because you want to be a meditator, okay? But then at some point you have some kind of illness or injury and you want to turn your attention to your health and well-being, your vitality, and you can do so very easily and very quickly with the material you've already learnt, right? And if you come in because you're not very well or you want to become healthy or stronger and you do that, and then at some point you get that interest in martial arts, well, now you have the bedrock for starting, because there's no way you could be a martial artist if you're weak and sickly. That's the end of it. And a lot of the old masters, yes, they did Tai Chi, not because they wanted to become a martial artist, but because they were ill and sickly. And that was an offshoot. That was a bonus feature that they picked up as they were doing their training, yes? And if you are interested in martial arts, you've got to get healthy. So you always start in the same point, you learn the same basic Neigong, and then you can branch out into these various aspects that are available to you. But you made a point there about the mind is the battleground of the future. We are seeing a lot of mental illness around. It is coming on. People are losing their minds, and if only they could learn simple techniques to ground, root. There's two kinds of rooting. There's the rooting of your physicality to the planet, your physical foot on the planet, ground, your energy descending through the soles of your foot to the bottom of your field to energetically root and ground. And then there is the rooting inside of your being and rooting into your central channel, yes? And rooting into your dantians on your central channel. Yeah. And so this is a second kind of rooting. And when you do that, your mind becomes way more stable, yes? And therefore you become aware of the influences around you. And it's like the phones, the tablets, the computers, the TV, the internet, everything. It's all drawing you outside of your body. And if you take someone's phone away from them today, they struggle to get through 24 hours without the phone. Yeah. And I also notice even in myself, like, I better check my phone, and it's like, well, why do I need to check my phone? Yeah. Why do I need to do that? It's like, it's suggested, it's imprinted, it's conditioned into us now, And so, we do really need to take back that ground. We do need to take back, our own sovereignty, if you will. And the internal arts are exceptionally good at that. And one thing I just want to touch on here is this. The techniques that we use are so refined, yes? They take your full, undivided attention. And that means when you're doing that, and Qigong is the precursor, Qigong, Neigong, is the precursor to meditation, without a shadow of a doubt. And if you go through the practice of Qigong, it really hones your mind. It focuses your mind. Yes, it narrows your mind into what you're doing in the here and now, being in the moment, being present, being aware, being awake. And then you have already learnt those tools, so when you sit, your mind isn't just splintering all over the place. And so, yes, if people could only just take that from our tradition, it would help them immensely.
Do you have any insights beyond what maybe we normally hear of like how to sort of keep yourself on at least some sort of a forward momentum?
Yeah, well, the first thing is not taking on board too much too quickly, because it overloads you. Right. It overloads you, it blows you out in some way. You struggle, you can't achieve the goals, you can't do it, it's too hard, too difficult, you give up immediately, right? So you've got to take it in bite-sized chunks. The first thing is, someone has to develop a personal practice, a daily practice. Yeah. You don't get anywhere with our material if you do it once or twice, now and again. You go out once a month and do something you go out for a picnic and do a bit of Tai Chi once a month. That's not going to do anything for you. You might get an experience doing that, but it's not going to do much. So the first thing is personal practice and daily practice. And yeah, people's attention span is really small, so start with 5-10 minutes. Get someone into that 5-10 minutes practice regularly. Doesn't have to be every day, but you got to be doing it 5 days a week, because if you're doing it 2-3 days a week, it's kind of like, yeah, something can happen. You might knock some stress on the head in that particular moment, but there's no momentum, right? It's the daily practice that gives momentum. So again, you start with something quite simple, try to go into its depth, some small amount of practice, personal practice. And a lot of people these days are into the meditation thing, and I totally get that. But let's just look at this for a moment. Meditation, if the person is not really on it, they're not really aware and they're not directed enough, they're going to just go into a mental space when they're meditating. They're in a mental space as it is. So how are they going to get out of that mental space when they go in to do something with the mind, right? So they need Qigong. They need to move their bodies. And we grew up as a species, as a nomadic species, right? So we moved all the time. We walked vast distances. We don't do this anymore. We walk to the car, we drive to the office, and then we sit in the office all day on a screen. Then we drive home, and then we sit in front of a computer watching stuff, or, phone, messaging stuff, or TV. And so it's very, very stagnant. And you need to move your body. If your body is not functioning well, your mind is not sharp. Your awareness is not high. Yes? Yeah. Your presence is going down. For sure. Yeah? So you need to move your body. You've got to get your body moving. You've got to circulate your blood and your qi. And then when you go to sit, when you go to meditate, then you now have that blood and qi circulating, so you don't fall asleep. You don't necessarily go easily into a pure mental space again. And we have this thing, it's the oscillation. It's the stillness and movement and stillness and movement. And the idea is, in movement you find internal stillness. And in a physical still practice, you find internal movement. So that means that when you're doing your Qigong, when you're doing your Tai Chi practice or your Bagua, whatever movement practice you're doing, you're looking for the mind to become stable and still within you, yes? And when you're sitting and meditating, you're looking for your blood and your qi to be circulating constantly, and you're not shutting down your system. And so this is really the beauty of this method. It is the fact that we have this integrative system that will allow you to achieve something in one practice that then passes into the next practice.
For sure. Yeah.
And then if you look at the different Qigongs that we do, this one builds up this area, and this one builds up another area, but they have common ground. And then when this is embodied, this will naturally show up in this one without you even trying.
For sure.
Yes, and then what you've learned here starts to show up in this practice. And then all of these Qigongs, all this Neigong material, starts to then come alive if you do things like Tai Chi and Bagua, which are basically Qigong, Neigong systems that are incredibly powerful and amplify and further all of the internal content of the Neigong. And this is why most people do it, if you want to get down to it. Very few are interested in martial arts. Very few. A lot of people fancy themselves in martial arts. A lot of people like to know, well, what are the applications? How do you use it? And that's all fine and dandy. But what it comes down to is most people, they want to do those Tai Chi and Bagua practices because of the way it opens up the body, the way it gets the blood and the Qi circulating, the strength, the power within the internal work within those. It's way stronger. But then trying to learn it through those arts is incredibly hard because they're incredibly complex.
For sure.
And that's why slow, gentle, repetitive motion, Qigong, whatever it is, you know, very simple Qigong movement, and you put all this depth into it, and now you've become aware of it. Now you have woken it up in your system. Now you have got some kind of handle on it. Now you take that and you put that into your Tai Chi and your Bagua, and then that amplifies that. And then you go in and you sit and you find half this stuff is running in your meditation. Yes?
For sure.
And then you put your mind on that while you're meditating, and that amplifies that in another way.
You know, when you first come in and try this stuff, you know, because I did Qigong before, but there's more of you learn the set, you know, it's more of the Qigong as opposed to the Neigong approach. And since I've been studying this stuff, I've met other people where you can kind of tell, like we're doing, you know, maybe the arms of heaven and earth for like, you know, a week or two. And they're like, maybe even longer. And it's like, the Western mind's like, oh, this is simple. I got this. You know, this is easy. You know, and then there's kind of this tendency to like, sort of just want to go farther. Like when I first went to that Energy Gates retreat 5 years ago, saw them do cloud hands. I'm like, oh, I got this. You know, it's going to be easy. You know, but then even now, you know, you go further down, you realize how much depth there is. And I think that with the average Westerner struggling to meditate so much because they can't stop thinking, it's kind of the overarching sort of mentality or consensus that people have from what the information they've given. You know, if you know, it's not about that, as you know, we've talked about, but you know, if I'm in this sort of space where I'm in the sitting meditation realm, and then I oscillate to like even a simple movement, and you realize like how much there is within there. Like you get this relative stillness. You just do a weight shift or like a simple movement, and you can do so much within that. And I think that it takes a bit to realize that. And that's when, like, at this point, I've learned all these complex things living close to the center where Bruce is teaching. But, you know, we've been doing just kind of heaven and earth on this trip. And just there's so much within that little bit. You realize that it's kind of like if you have like a big, deep sort of like Lake Baikal in Russia. It's a very deep lake, but it's ultimately not that wide. You know, but then if you take something that's very deep and you spread it out, it gets very shallow. You know, so if you're doing all these separate things, you think like, oh, this is so cool, I'm pulsing. I'm like, wow, this is badass.
Well, you touched on something there that's really important. It's like the Qigong prepares you for meditation, right? So if you did your Qigong before your meditation, what you're going to find is that your meditation, you're more alive, more aware, more awake. Yes? Okay, great. And then if you do your meditation before you do your Qigong, you'll notice that if you do actually meditate and you do actually like release, yes, and let go of all these tensions you're holding in your body, or at least a chunk of it, that when you come to do your Qigong, it is so much more powerful, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's like 10 times.
Yeah.
Yes, and so it's like, well, are you doing your Qigong to improve your meditation, or are you doing your meditation to improve your Qigong? You know, and it's like you go around this loop. You just go around this loop. And often in a day, I will do some Qigong just to warm up because it's the easiest, quickest way to get your blood and Qi online, yes? And then I'll do some Tai Chi or some Bagua, and then I'll go into some meditation. And then I want to go back to a simple Qigong movement again, because now I've done that meditation, I know I have, let's say, unlocked more of my internal system, more of my internal energy. My nervous system is way more released, yes, and it takes me somewhere between half an hour and an hour to get that real drop in my nervous system, a real deep release in the nervous system, so that when I come to move my arm again or my body, it's just like, it's almost a struggle to pick it up, you know?
Right.
Because the nerves have released to such a point that you don't even want to put any effort into the body now because it's so relaxed.
Like there's a tendency to want to stay still, like
Yeah,
at that point.
But
Yeah.
then there's the opportunity now that any specific Neigong thread that you are working on, you can really bring that alive.
For sure.
You can really amplify the effectiveness of that Neigong, which of course then folds back into the next day of your next Qigong, you know. Yeah, it's just, it's a wheel. It's a wheel. It just goes round and round.
Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to like something that I think the West has largely, you know, overlooked as sort of the point of meditation. You don't think, I just want to feel good, so I sit here and breathe, and that's, you know, that's it. You know, but ultimately, we don't even really have a concept of the whole idea that the Taoists have about expanding your awareness. You know, it's not something people think is possible ultimately. Like it's you can't go beyond your brain, but there's a lot of evidence even outside of these esoteric arts, like an ESP. CIA was doing research on that in the 70s, and there's some crazy shit. Like people can 100% project their consciousness everywhere. Not that that's where people really want to go, but ultimately, like, you know, the idea that you can like expand your awareness into yourself, or even like sort of just soften it and let it expand into like your world to sort of create a better life for yourself.
Thinking cuts your ability to feel, kinesthetic sense, feeling. Like if you blow down your arm, that's not an emotion, that is your sensory perception, right? When you focus in on the kinesthetic feeling sense, it actually reduces, or has the potential to reduce you thinking through things. And thinking prevents you from feeling your body deeply. So the antidote, obviously, is get out of your head and into your body. If you look at the five senses, you know, your smell through your nose, your hearing through your ears, your vision through your eyes, your taste through your mouth, are all located in your head. The one sense that is all over you is the kinesthetic sense, touch, we call it, the touch sense. You know, you feel something. And that is all over you, from head to toe, from surface of skin into your core. And that is why Taoism uses that sense, because that sense takes you really into your body. Yes, it takes you out of your mind. It stops you thinking so much. And now you have a dichotomy between when your mind is actually inside of you, your body, and when your mind is spinning wheels in your head and you're in pure mentation. Yes? And we want to get out of that pure mental state and into feeling, all of us. So the antidote is feel your body, get into your body. And then, of course, when you get into your body, now you are in a position to experience more of you, right? And the depths of you. And then you start to become aware of, you know, what's the classic? When you go inside, all you're going to find is what is there, okay? And most people don't like what they find. Within 5 minutes of getting people to drop their mind in their body, I watch people doing this and going like this and like this, because now they're actually, maybe the first time that day, yes, since they got out of bed, are starting to feel their body, and they're starting to feel all the aches and the pains and the discomforts in their body. And so people don't want to be there, right? But now you know what you're dealing with. Now you know what you're working on. You're working on releasing all of that. You're releasing that tension. And to release your soft tissues, you need to get to your nervous system. When you release your nervous system, you release your soft tissues. When you do that, your energy descends, the tension sinks out of your body, and you find yourself in a state of being. And this is what we've lost. We've lost the state of being. You know, there's one comedian and they're like, you should get a job. He goes, don't want a job. And they're like, well, what are you going to do all day? And he goes, I'll sit here and watch the bird. You know, it's a state of being, not doing.
Yeah, you're supposed to feel guilty if you're not productive.
And people do. And people do. So this is like, human being, not human doing. Right? We're here to be, to exist, to experience, to feel. Yes? Not just to think our way through it, otherwise we could just take the brain out, put it in a jar, we'd be happy and we'd just continue on. But there's more to it than that, isn't there?
There is, yeah.